90% sale is done as a product company because there's a level of trust. And I think Gartner is a great company, right? They have built great standards, processes around it. But at the same time, a company like our size or a startup in the ecosystem, it becomes very difficult to reach to that level of maturity. It takes time. It's a process, right? So which means I was talking to someone, right? And bidding into one of the government contracts, he said, you should be in Gartner. Sir, I can't be in Gartner. Come on, let's be practical. How can you be in Gartner, right? So on the one hand, there's a good amount of push in terms of that we should promote Indian companies. But on the other hand, that time you get a green star saying Gartner, we are out, right? So the point is this is also very important. So what I'm saying is we should balance it in the way that there is a product certification given to the startup, well acknowledged by the system while they're releasing these tenders, RFPs and all. I think that's another area where the level playing field come post you build the product. The third thing when it comes to the enterprise market, private sector, if I'll just ignore the government sector for the time being, right? What are the tax benefits you get? Tomorrow, if you get a tax benefit of buying a software from me, trust me, you will be more comfortable because saving money for the company, right? Do you get insurance benefits, right? Because you are mitigating your risk using an Indian product certified by the Indian government or certified by the Indian agency. Hence, the insurance value of that anything getting happened, right, it's reduced by X percentage, right? That is not there today. So what we are saying is co-creation, if I build this in silo, will not help unless this entire ecosystem will evolve, which will benefit me, which will benefit you also as a customer, right? So I think these are some food for thought from our side. One of the things I want to discuss is more on the funding part of it, but I think in the interest of time, I'll keep this reserved. But I think we need to look at co-creation in this model where your basics, all these three parameters has to be in place, both on the customer side, both on the government side of it. Then this co-creation can really do wonders for us as a country or as a product company. Thank you.
So, okay, so we've talked. Do you guys have any questions or interaction you have amongst each other that you would like to raise? Nice conversational thing, or everything is good and it sounds great and we don't want any debates and everybody out there is going to be bored because we're not doing anything useful.
Well, I was wondering, I have a question for you. So, like you are a product.
I think you probably have to turn these. Yeah, I like doing this one. Do I have to turn this off? Really? This is a denial of service attack. So actually, the Indians are learning quite well, how to stop things from actually moving forward.
Working now? Yeah. So Dhruv, I like you, we are a product development company. So I wanted to ask you, we have faced this situation multiple times in the past, at least within India, where we have lost out to a brand, not to the quality of the product, but to the brand of the product. And there have been cases, even within Government of India. So I remember one case within Ministry of Finance itself, where they ended up buying 80 cybersecurity products. Not one of them was an Indian product because the criteria was that all of those products have to be in Gartner's market leader. That is ridiculous. I don't know of any one Indian company which is in Gartner's market leader right now. And despite the fact that the customer was convinced that we have a better quality product, we lost out to the brand of the product. So have you faced this situation?
Very good question. In fact, and very political question also. No. So, yes, if you ask me, but on the separate note, we don't participate in the government tenders because we know we'll not get qualified.
Very diplomatic answer.
So I think one of the things on a separate note, that was more on the lighter note. I think there's an ecosystem which has to work. I think there's a laid out procedures in the government ecosystem which you and me cannot change, right? And I think there's a great amount of work done by the government officials while laying down those RFPs, those procedures, right? And I think it is in line of the government policy. I think it has to be done at a different level where there's an enforcement which has to come in terms of opening a green channel for the Indian companies to freely participate. Technology, if you qualify, technically if you qualify based on the laid down procedures, then you should give them some waiver on certain things. I think that's a message which will help the entire ecosystem. But I think it has to come from the top, right, at the end of the day, right? I think there is a work, I think with DSCI, we guys are doing as part of the cyber security task force, where one of the objectives is basically to strengthen what you just highlighted that, it's not matter of participation, matter of the time it takes for us to go and get into the system, it takes time for us. And the startup, one of the problem is that you are actually running a marathon, right? So I know I have to run 100 meters and this is the only time I have, this is the only calories I'm living with right now. right? And so it's as good as playing a T20 than a test match, right? I would prefer to play a T20, put as many sixes and fours you want, right? Because that's the only time you have. Test match, I think it's a bigger game altogether. So I think for a startup, until or unless that entire ecosystem is very well built, the procedures are laid out, the green channel has been opened, then I think that's the best market for us. Why do I need to go to the international market? I think this is the best market for us. Globally, everybody is coming to India today, right? Everybody is investing. I was in Canada. I was sharing with Dan some time back. The last 4 weeks I was in Canada with working with the Ontario government, Toronto, right? And span of 4 weeks, right? What I have learned, what I have observed with the level of interface, and I think you also highlighted in Israel, exactly the same thing. We are part of the DMZ, and in the DMZ we have the government minister. We are sitting with the enterprise. We are sitting with the investors. We are sitting with the customers. We are sitting with the partners. And said, this is the podium you have. This is the platform you have. Tell us what you want. And we said, this is my wish list. Trust me, 2 weeks they have executed it beautifully, right? The level of comfort we have seen there, right, with the level of integration is working so well, laid out procedures, right? And the good part, everybody is incentivized in this model, right? There's an incentive for the customer, right? There is an incentive from the insurance standpoint, tax benefits. There is an incentive for me as a product company because the government funds you, right? There is an incentive for the partner, there is an incentive for the investor. So I think the point is this entire system has worked so well, right? I think it's just a matter of getting the entire system together and making it work. If that works well, trust me, why do I need to go out? I really don't need to go out. I think we have, if you look at the SME data, right, recently macro SMEs, right, there are 3.5 million SMEs in this country. Trust me, this is the biggest SME market if I just keep China outside for some time, because that's largely on the manufacturing. Here it's a cross sector, right? In a cross sector MSME market, this is the biggest across the globe. And we are not even exploiting that market today, sitting here locally and thinking about going abroad, right? So I think that ecosystem is critical. Just to answer your question, if that comes up well, I think this is the best market to work, this is the best market to grow your organization, and you can scale up easily.
So the Ryerson DMZ zone, and in fact the Carleton University's Lead to Win, there's an organization in Stockholm, I think it was Stockholm, Sweden, called UBI, which rates accelerators and that around the world. And those two came within the top 10 in North America for university-led accelerators. And unfortunately, I have to say this, but actually Ryerson beat out Carleton, so you went to a very good location there. And I fully concur with you. That mixture of people and the startups is what makes things work. And I think with CyberSpark and that, it seems to be a little different in Israel in the sense that you've brought in all the big players to go down to Beersheba. And it's an interesting concept as to what is the ecosystem there, because really you got 20,000 folks in the military. It's a significant portion of the Israeli Defense Forces that are actually involved in cyber operations of some sort. They've moved down to Beersheba, and about 10% of them leave the organization, the military, every year. So that means there's 2,000 people that are looking for something to do, and they've been heavily trained. There's a clear focus in Israel to get folks up to speed on cybersecurity. So they've got a built-in talent development process. And then those guys are looking for things to do. And so, when they're looking for jobs, right there's all these companies, there's CyberSpark that wants to try and get the startups going. And so it's an interesting play, I think, on the ecosystem model as to how that works. And I don't know what your perspective has been as to what's emerging from there.
Okay, first of all, I think it's a problem for the Israeli military because all of the great minds moved to the private companies, but it's not that big of a problem because usually afterwards they give consulting to the military just with more money. So it's a problem, but it's a problem that can be solved. But you're absolutely right about the big companies. The big enterprise has understood the potential that we've got in Israel, and they're doing it in two ways. The first one is to acquire an Israeli company.
Yeah.
Only in 2015, an Israeli cybersecurity company was acquired at the amount of $1.3 billion. It's all the big ones, all the big names are there. It's PayPal, it's RSA, it's even Checkpoint. I guess you heard about the Israeli Checkpoint company. It's one of the leading ones. They were established in '93 when I think most of us did not know about computers at all. I personally did not only play it or something, and there was only no viruses at all. But they started it all, and they also understand the potential, and they also acquire an Israeli startup. And the big companies outside of Israel are doing that. Instead of opening an R&D centers in their country, they are taking the advantage of the startup that already been established and use the R&D capabilities that we have in Israel in order to strengthen their powers outside of Israel. And it's been done by a lot of multinationals around the world, from Japan to the US. And I know, by the way, the reason I'm here is to explore. You mentioned about India. It's a large market, it's a huge market. And this is exactly the reason why I'm here, to explore and to understand better how can we work here. So I totally agree with you when you say you don't need to go outside. In Israel, we are very small, so we cannot work only in Israel. But in India, you have a great market, you have a huge market. And I think, by the way, that you don't need only the government to be on top of it, because in India, you have a large layer of big conglomerates that can also be involved in this situation, and they can also be in the front, let's say, of the cybersecurity. They can add cybersecurity, not regulation, but let's say standards, because they are not the government. But I think this is a great market. Then, personally, from my point of view, Israel and India can join forces and be better protected by the government and by the private sector.
So there's about 7 minutes left, so I have other questions I can ask, but are there folks in the audience that have a question? Yeah?
I just wanted to understand, like, what we India, we have some security concerns. They are good enough, but how we can have more extensive level what Israeli has, how we can grow up in the same way, like what technology or what way we have to approach that we also get the same level of expertise in India.
I guess you're referring to me, right? The first thing, I invite you to come to Israel and to meet some of the specialists, because we have a lot of experts. It depends on the field of interest. It depends, we've got expert in the field of training. We've got expert in the field of ICS OT. We've got specialists in the network, or even in the consultant. So it depends exactly what are you looking for. But believe me, we are open for collaboration. We know that together we are stronger, and this is why the government of Israel understands it, and we are signing a lot of agreement, G2G or G2B, less G2C because it's less relevant, but we are really trying to strengthen the relationship in order to strengthen our power against let's say, the bad guys. So feel free, if you need anything, I'm here, I can give you my card, and afterwards I can connect you with whatever you need.
So, one of the issues, I think, it's very interesting, the comments that I heard from the two folks that reside in India. There's clearly a question of trust between different jurisdictions, and you have to try to rebuild, that trust. So we know very well that, unfortunately for Huawei, their penetration into the U.S. market is pretty low, right? Conversely, the penetration of American product into China is certainly being retarded because there's a lack of trust. Each country just believes there are backdoors in their software that have been put in there by the foreign countries. And the question is, how do you do that? And if you're going to be a cybersecurity company and you want to go global, you got to address that issue. And one of the arguments, at least we take, is that you might be better off going open source and finding a business model around open source, so that if any country wants to take a look at what your software is about, they can go and do that and evaluate it and whatever it is. You have to then develop the business model on top of the open source to move forward. We're of the view that proprietary software probably has limited days if you really want to go on a global market. Because if we do, as India is potentially talking about here, I know I've only got 2 representatives out of 1 billion people, but the fact is we'll silo, right? And we'll just have different countries doing their own things. We won't trust each other. And the real benefits of a global-based, cyberspace will not occur. We're beginning to see some aspects of that negative play. Some other question out here. I was going to talk about open source, but I think if we go down there, that would be a bit of a mess. There's somewhere behind the lights. So.
My question is that, like, in the introduction topic, it has been mentioned that many of the Indian startups have been not being considered due to the ratings which are getting into the Gartner. It is not the time that we should start a rating for Indian products also, and we should mention into the clause if it's not available into the Gartner's rating, at least in the Indian rating, if the product is there, it should be considered.
I'll take that question. So NCSC now is actually coming out with a policy which says that Gartner empanelment cannot be considered as a criteria for rejecting a product. They're actually coming out with a policy, so they're doing something on those lines. Plus, I think Atul in DSCI has been working very hard in convincing the government to come up with change the entire working of STQC and come up with an easier certification standard which Indian products can adhere to. So government is taking certain initiatives. It will take time, like everything in India, things take time filtering down, so it will take some time, but I am hoping we'll get there.
There's one more over there?
Yeah, so my question is purely from a perspective of the SMEs in India. So as Israel and Canada have that, the enterprise or companies there are more open towards or more aware towards the security threats they face. How open, in your experiences, how open how aware are the SMEs in India about the security threats and the consequences that they face due to it?
Okay, so we work closely with SMEs. Thanks for it's a good question. See, typically, I think in the last, I would say 2 to 3 years, there is a good amount of, I would say that the learning curve have already gone up because 1, 2, 3 drivers for it. Definitely the cloud becomes one of the biggest drivers because the cost to operate have gone down because of the cloud invasion into the SME sector. That's one. 2, there are a lot of, I would say, hybrid apps started getting enforced on the mobile workforce within the SME sector, right? So this opens the door for building the right security posture, right? Yes, there is a level of education, knowledge dissemination required at the ground level, right, which we have to do. But yes, I agree that I think the SME sectors is in a very early adopter of cybersecurity long back. But yes, the enforcement has started. They started onboarding controls, and in fact, the good part, because in an SME, the decision making is very limited to the top management, right? I've seen a lot of times you will not even find a designated CISO in the SME sector. Largely the technology team, IT manager is a pseudo CISO to say that, right? And I've seen directly the CEO or MD of the company, or they takes the decision and they understand that why this is important, because you may be 50 user organization but doing worth some millions of dollars of business in India or elsewhere outside, right? And because of all these technologies around it, it's important to monitor, put right set of controls around information security. So yes, the adoption has started and I've seen companies enforcing those controls now. Yeah.
So I can't answer the question with respect to the SMEs, but I've given a series of lectures over the last week at various universities. And what surprised me a bit was the lack of knowledge of cybersecurity, that it really is at the very beginning stages. And there's clearly an educational perspective that needs to go on. And I had to talk with them a lot about just some of the threats. We have a lot of potential benefits that are going to come from cyberspace. You folks are about to digitize your currency, for example, right? As I explained to them, it's very interesting. You can go in and rob a bank and you get a couple 100 million rupees or whatever. The economy is not going to care. But if you get a successful state-based attack on your currency mechanism, and I know there's smart people working on this here, but I just don't know any of the details. Well, let's presume that there was a successful attack. You could take out all the full economy with one attack, and that's really strong cyber warfare type stuff. And you've got to be prepared for that. And I think one of the differences that we see between places like Israel, Russia, China, and the U.S. is they effectively view themselves being in a little bit of a kind of a war mind, right? They know they got particular adversaries, they got the resources to do stuff. Countries like Canada just don't take that perspective, and I don't think India is there yet either. And until that awareness and the urgency becomes prevalent, people are going to recognize the issues and start building the responses that they want. And yes, that's a comment. I think it's really important that the various countries, and I'm thinking accelerators and research parks and stuff, that we try to work globally, get much better connected, and try to move forward as a group, as an ecosystem. You co-create solutions, you look at the problems, you build the startups and get out the doors. You know, it's a bit of a negative, I think, for the startups to get acquired by the big companies, because, you know, the real wealth is created by the startups going like Facebook and that, and so it's a bit interesting.
So then one
So
last
time
point,
is up.
I have a last point to add
yeah.
to this, right? And I think, see, one of the things which you would have seen, I think my friend talks about a 20% kind of investment happening. See, this is a space which has an opportunity to create a lot of employment, a lot of new technology, right? And this can only happen when the entire ecosystem works in tandem, it works in an integrated manner. Trust me, this is a cyber. When I was in this riots and DMZ, right? When I look at the Canada from the market standpoint, right? They are still, you will be surprised to know, I was reading a lot of reports, met a lot of people in the bank, government and all. Canada is still behind India when it comes to cybersecurity maturity. There are a lot of Indo-Canadian bilateral programs happening on where the officers coming from Canada, from the law enforcement to India getting trained, right? There's strong technology maturity, but yes, I think the level of trust factor in Canada is too high as compared to India. People will not do anything wrong there, right? Here you get an opportunity to do something wrong, right? But irrespective of that, I think if that model works here, trust me, this could become one of the biggest employment generator as far as the market goes, which people have not realized it by now. So that's very important.
Yeah, and I agree. And you differentiate between the fact that you have cybersecurity companies, but also companies that may be working in other domains, but they take cybersecurity seriously, and therefore they can enable a market differentiator to move forward. I'd like to thank my panel for their discussions and their questions and their response. I'd like to thank you for the questions that you asked. I hope it wasn't, I hope it was an interesting 1 hour, and thank you for coming today. Thanks.
Thank you, panel, for the discussion. And there is a lunch-on meeting by Rapid 7 in Royal 2. If you are invited, please join there, and rest of them can enjoy their lunch in the lobby.